Hey fellow golfers, I wanted to do a cluster of 4 clips to really help you think about a number of things that you can work on to identify what they are, to look at what that might mean in terms of areas of concentration to focus on the range, on practice rounds, what key shots you can build into that armory, what some recent analysis using gears from others have shown that are the key differences between some pros and amateurs on key golf moves, and what are some of the areas which differ between good and less good golfers. Combining that package together with some initial data that I will present up above, you should have an armory to significantly improve your golf game, significantly improve your handicap and score, even bringing it down by as much as 10 shots per round. Wouldn't that be fantastic? So let's start with the first bit of data, which is on drives. And this data looks at the average number of shots lost per round, whether you're in the shooting the 90 per round category versus the 80 per round category. You will see that in the 90 per round category, on average, there are 3 awful drives per round. In the 80 category, that number is 1.3, so quite a bit of difference. So a key objective clearly for those in the 90 category, or if it's 80 and you're trying to move to the 70 category, is bring those drives more into play, hit more fairways. So one of the things that you want to track on your scorecard per round, and do it for a number of rounds and take the average, is to see how many awful drives or not so good drives off the fairway, well off the fairway, are you hitting per round. And perhaps you want to even focus it for your course, so it's particular holes. And so you begin to know one of the key areas you want to particularly focus on. And this is not just related to distance, but it's in fact related to the shot pattern. In other words, landing it out of the fairway as opposed to in of the fairway. The second is on approach. So a key area for those mid-irons, depending on how far you hit each of your irons, but we're talking roughly 150 yards and in to the green. What are the numbers there? So you will see that in the 90 category, over average of over 10 rounds, hits awful approach shots 33 times. In the 80 category, this is 14 times, so quite a bit of difference. So that approach shot tracking and pattern, are you hitting into the green, into the bunker, or onto the green, is key. Track that on your scorecards, and you will begin to see some pattern. If the pattern is very good, so you're really not having too many awful shots, then clearly that's not the area that you need to most focus on. The other issue related to approach shots is the pattern in relation to where the ball ends up, the distance from the pin. So in the 90 category, it's 56 feet from the pin on average. In the 80 category, it's 42 feet from the pin on average. And pros on average, it's about 23 feet to give you a yardstick. So clearly, it's not just the question of shot pattern. Also in this case, it's also where does the ball end up, and can you get it closer, relatively speaking, to the pin more than further away. Because that'll put less pressure on your long and short putts and bring your score down considerably. The third area is when you're in closer proximity, so 40 yards and 60 yards and in. Let's focus on the data for 40 yards. For 40 yards and in those in the 90 category, the ball ends up about 25 feet from the pin on average. For the 80 category, the ball ends up about 19 feet from the pin on average. So once again, those sort of short chip, perhaps a short punch shot, a half wedge, are areas where that will make the most difference. The other interesting statistic is 60 yards and in. How many shots does it take to hole out? For that 90 category, it's about 3.5 shots to hole out. For the 80 category, it's 3. So once again, that 60 yards and in is maybe an area to you to focus on, but certainly if you track your 60 yards and in, your 40 yards and in against some of this data, but really from the point of view of the numbers of shots, the closer it is to the pin, how many awful shots you're doing even, are you coming out of the rough, and I'll come back to that in a moment. That'll help you focus on the key areas. Putting. I mean, let's start with that 3 putts are a killer. So clearly you want to improve your putting overall. And the key distances from the data seem to be 8 feet and holing out. And then the sort of 40, 45 feet longer putts and how close it comes to the pin so that you can actually do a second putt and not put yourself under pressure that you might be having to do a further 2 putts. So the same data suggests that for the 90 category, on average they do 1 putt from 8 feet 27% of the time, whereas the 80 category, that number is 33% of the time. So 33% of the time from 8 feet, they do a single putt to hole out. And then proximity to the hole from 40 feet, so those long putts. 50% of the time, the 90 category gets it to about 4 feet from the hole, and 50% of the time, the 80 category gets it a foot closer, so 3 feet from the hole on average. So once again, here, focusing on speed and distance for long putts becomes key. And even lag putting, which is getting it even closer than that, becomes another key factor to focus on. So if you track how you do against those 2 things and see if your pattern matches some of this data, but more importantly, where you are clearly having extra putts as a result or extra shots or not getting it as close as you need to be on average over a number of rounds, perhaps over 10 rounds, averaging it out. A number of broad things about shots to track then over and beyond the specifics that I've just mentioned. One is, what is your realistic distance? Not only per club, because you really need to average out your distances and use an extra club if you need to, not what you think you ought to be hitting or you are hitting. So do try to take your averages, whether it's starting it on the range and then verifying it against whether that ends up being the same on the course. Focus on realistic distances and focus on equally on getting your shots, especially that 150-yard shot, your drives, into play. In regard particularly to the 150-yard and in, really note down the shot pattern. Are you often hitting it in a bunker and rough? How many times per round? The more you can identify where your shots are not quite ending up on the green as they should be, or on the center of the green ideally, then you form a cluster of shot pattern, and you know 2 things. One is you need to focus on that, and if you are getting a lot in the rough around the green or in a bunker, then clearly the next shot, one off from the rough and from the bunker, is key to work on. And that's an area that, again, you want to be putting it closer in that next shot. So you may want to, as a result of that, spend a bit more time working on bunker shots or rough shots, chips, short pitches, punch shots from the rough, either back into the fairway or onto the green. So what you could track on your scorecard is how many mishits you're having also from the rough and from the bunker. So are you mishitting out of the bunker 3 out of 5 bunkers, which case clearly that's an area you could significantly whittle down if you're focused on learning that particular shot, or you're chunking your shot 5 times in a round, in which case looking at why you're chunking and ways to address that. I will do a clip on that soon, maybe the area to focus on. But if you track your shots on your scorecard for some or other of these areas, then just very quick jotting down of notes, and you look across several scorecards, you will quickly know where to focus and what to look for, and if you're having lessons, maybe what to particularly ask your coach to focus on as opposed to just your overall stroke. What will follow in the next clip, so do subscribe and put the notifications on, is what are some of the key areas and differences between good and not so good players. Subsequently, the next clip after that will be some key shots you need, not only for competition, but in your armory, to always build your confidence, but be able to also go to those key shots whenever you need them to stabilize your round, to rely on, including a go-to shot that I referred to in previous clips. And then finally, what will follow is a clip on key golf moves of pros and the differences between amateurs. And it could be that addressing one or other of those elements is key to improving your consistency, but also your distance. I hope that this data and some of the shots to track will help you know where to focus and improve your overall score. See you on the flip side.